I saw the new Studio Ghibli movie The Boy and the Heron twice this past week in theaters, both its original Japanese and English dub counterparts, and I gotta say, this movie wasn't for me. At least not right now. Perhaps in time I'll grow further to like this movie, but as of right now I really wasn't all that moved or invested in it. And if anything, I actually liked it less the second time around that I saw it. However, I should also mention that I'm just not a huge Studio Ghibli fan. I mostly view these movies as way more style than substance, and I totally understand that I'm in the minority, and that's an incredibly hot take that I just made. But in my head, most Studio Ghibli movies are more about the vibes, more about these fantastical worlds, and more about the emotions that they invoke in you and the visuals than the actual stories that are on display. More about character and overarching themes and messages than plot. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing at all, or that my way of thinking is objectively sound. No, not at all. This is just my opinion, of course. And again, obviously, I'm in the negative here. Studio Ghibli movies are beloved by most people, particularly the Miyazaki movies. And it's not like I'm not in that boat. One of my favorite movies of all time is Spirited Away. I also really like Ponyo and Porco Rosso. Isao Takahata's Grave of the Fireflies is also a fantastic movie, but one that's incredibly hard to watch and viscerally haunting. I remember feeling so fucking sad for like an entire week after watching that movie. Like, no joke, Grave of the Fireflies is brutal, guys. And another one of Takahata's movies that I've slowly been falling more and more in love with is Only Yesterday. I remember when I first watched that movie, I really wasn't too fond of it. I found it a bit slow, and for me, it kind of just meandered around a little bit. But that was the point of the movie, really. And over time, I've really grown to appreciate and actually love that movie. And I think the same thing could very well happen with The Boy and the Heron, because again, I really wasn't too hot on this movie. It's most certainly a visual feast accompanied with beautiful music, nice performances, and some good laughs, but I just couldn't really bring myself to be emotionally invested in just about anything that was going on. I might catch some flack for this comparison, but I find it to be really true, again in my opinion, but The Boy and the Heron was very reminiscent of Ari Aster's last movie just this year, Beau is Afraid. I know it's the craziest comparison, but for me, this felt like a movie that Miyazaki made for himself, about himself. And it's a movie that can be interpreted a lot of different ways, but really, only he knows the true meaning behind it all. Same way Beau is Afraid feels like a movie that was made for Ari Aster, about Ari Aster, and only he knows what it's actually about. We can all assume it's about a man attempting to come to grips with his past and the things that he has or hasn't done, but we won't really know that for sure. Same goes for The Boy and the Heron. Not to say that it's much different from other Ghibli movies though, because it's really not. It just feels like a much more personal story that's not really conveyed on screen. And with that, I'm going to go into spoilers now, because I feel like it's pretty hard to talk about this movie without going into some kind of spoilers. Overall though, I didn't hate my time with this movie at all. I enjoyed it, but I probably won't be seeing it again for a long time. It just wasn't an experience for me. And I just don't think it's a movie necessarily made for us, so much as it's made for Miyazaki himself. So with that, let's just get into spoilers, which, by the way, if you haven't seen this movie, nothing I say from here on out is going to make any fucking sense, alright? But anyway, I think the protagonist in Mahito is pretty bare bones and kind of weak. I don't really think he's got a whole lot going on beyond the standard, "My mom just died and now I have to save my new mother, but in doing so I will find a newfound appreciation for life and the uncertainties that come with it." Nothing new or crazy here, it's really just as simple as that. Same goes for the characterization of most characters here. I won't go very in depth with each of the characters, but it just felt like most of them were serviceable, and they all played a part. They just weren't exactly fully fleshed out. Oh, and I'll also say this. I did think the original Japanese sub version of the movie was better. I tend to like the English dubs of the Ghibli movies, and this isn't bad by any means, not at all. I just thought the original language was better for this story. I also thought Robert Pattinson, above everyone else in the English cast, was the most intriguing but also the most inconsistent of the bunch. I didn't for a second hear Robert Pattinson's voice in The Heron, ever, but the voice work he gives is very inconsistent. His accent, tone, inflections, and just overall voice is all over the place. Overall though, he was definitely trying. I mean, that's extremely clear. And I think it works for the most part. It's just a little inconsistent here and there. Moving on a little, I think the first act was very strong. When Mahito is just living in this new home of his, in this new part of the country, and dealing with that, and also dealing with the strange happenings around the estate, I think all that's really good. But once he enters the fantasy world, that was actually when the movie started to lose me, which is strange for a Ghibli movie. There's a whole lot of ideas and concepts being thrown around, like life and death, the overworld and underworld, rebirth and acceptance, that sort of thing. And that's all fine and dandy, but then they fucking introduce a meteorite that comes out of the sky and lands, and it has magical powers, and how Mahito's ancestor, his great uncle, built a tower around this meteorite to study it and harness its powers, but it all just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it wasn't really explored. And yeah, I mean, of course there's some other deeper philosophical meaning behind this meteorite scene. I just struggled to really see its overall purpose or necessity to the story. I don't really think the movie would change that much if that scene and this meteorite explanation was just completely cut out of the movie. Maybe I missed something with the meteor. And jumping ahead to the final act, I did find it a bit messy. The stuff with the Parakeet King and Hime being the requested descendant, it just kind of comes out of nowhere, which isn't new for Ghibli. I mean, I said I loved Spirited Away earlier in the video, and that movie does this very thing too with Zeniba. But I thought Zeniba's inclusion made a whole lot more sense in the plot, like this kingdom of parakeets and how they took over the meteorite and how they're gonna go to the Tower Master and demand a certain descendant. And all this random ass shit truly comes out of nowhere and just happens in the final act. At least for me it did. I didn't really see much setup for that. Beyond maybe a little line from the Heron when he questions why the parakeets are out in a certain part of this kingdom. Not to mention the movie also just sort of ends. I mean, there's a pretty big time jump in the final couple seconds of the movie, and then it just cuts to black. I sort of saw it as like a more egregious version of the Harry Potter ending. And I hope that my disappointment for this movie isn't met with, well, you just didn't get it. And to those people, fucking lick my balls, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this movie. And even then, just because a movie is complex or has more to say underneath its surface, that doesn't mean that you have to like it or that you're stupid for not liking it. You know? I mean, ironically, when I got out of it the first time, the group of people in front of me turned to each other and said, man, I really need a Letterboxd explanation of this movie. Which is kind of funny, but I think kind of defeats the purpose of the movie. Same with Beau is Afraid. I think if you sit there and try to overanalyze this movie and pick it apart and attempt to understand everything that's going on, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. I think this is a movie that's meant to be interpreted. I don't think that there's a right way to look at this movie or a right meaning behind it, at least for us audiences. Because my own interpretation of the movie is that both Mahito and his great uncle, the god of this realm essentially, are stand-ins for Miyazaki. I think the ending of this movie, where Mahito is faced with the choice between becoming the new god of this realm, being able to bring peace and harmony to it all, to create the perfect universe, or return back to his home, the land of the living, the normal world, you know, a world of chaos and uncertainties, is a mirror of Miyazaki. I saw this as Miyazaki looking back at his life's work, these perfect little fantastical worlds that he's created with these building blocks, and how he's looking for a successor, someone to take over his work once he's gone, but his actual kids are onto different paths in life, like the old man. But then you have Miyazaki's almost like regret, hesitation, and acceptance with Mahito. He chooses to go back to the real world and give up on the perfect universe that was offered to him. He wants to return back to his friends, his family. He overcomes his grief and anger from the loss of his mother and decides to endure the chaos that is the strange and cruel experience that is living in the real world. Part of me sees this as Miyazaki wishing he spent more time with those around him and devoted less time to his work. I mean, nearing the end of his life now, I'm sure he's full of regret, gratitude, fear, and happiness. And again, I'm just assuming here. And this movie touches on all those emotions very clearly, but a lot of the meaning behind those emotions, you do have to infer. And I also understand that this movie is loosely based on the book How Do You Live? I mean, the book even makes an appearance in the movie. Even if you're someone who can say, well, I thought it was pretty obvious that that's what this movie is about. I mean, it really isn't, because a lot of people didn't get that from this movie. Because again, I think Miyazaki mainly made this movie for himself and for us to interpret and explore it on our own. I don't think that there's a right way to look at this movie. I mean, it's clearly a very personal story, both about legacy and acceptance. And it's one that we might not ever fully understand. But again, I do think this is a movie that I'll grow to enjoy more and more over time. I just need to sit on it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, those are my general thoughts on The Boy and the Heron. I missed some stuff here and there, but I got my main points across. I didn't want this video to be too long now. As usual, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one. And I mean, while we're here in the outro, let me just give a little impersonation of Robert Pattinson as the Heron.
Your mother, she's awaiting your rescue. Mahito, save me! Your mother, she's awaiting your rescue.